Welcome to Give a Heck. I am your host, Dwight Heck, and for much of my life, lived my life in quiet desperation, wondering how I was going to pay the bills, take vacations, save for retirement, and one day wondering if I would get off the hamster wheel of life and have purpose. A life that most of society lives, which takes us to work, then home, then repeat, and pays us hopefully enough just to survive. The harsh truth that most live with more month than money and have no idea how to live life on purpose, not by accident. This ensures the mass majority are living not just financially broke, however, emotionally and mentally as well due to financial pressures. In each episode, I will introduce you to thoughts, ideas, and guests that can help you to learn how you too can live life on purpose, not by accident.
Good day and welcome to Give a Heck. On today's show, I welcome Orson Wells. For 20 years, Orson has helped leaders simplify and solve complex problems. He is a coach, trainer, and advisor that has worked with business leaders at the highest level to help them overcome the challenges of leadership, improve their performance, and reignite their passion for purpose. I'd like to welcome you to the show, Orson. Thanks so much for agreeing to come on and share with us some of your life journey.
Thank you for having me on the show, Dwight. I greatly appreciate it. I'm excited about our conversation today.
Yes, so am I. I resonated so much with as I was building what I wanted to do for the show, how I wanted our conversation to go. I enjoyed going through your website, reading everything about you, and doing a little bit of other research. We have a lot in common, so it makes the conversation that much better. So, the first thing that I want to discuss, and you and I discussed this off the recording a little bit, and people talk about the back end. I'm a little bit more anal about the back end. I'm about the origin story. And the origin story and the back end are completely different. The back end is people start in the middle and they go, oh, I finished college and I did this, this, and that. I like to really understand people from the core of who they are as people. And for me, the origin story, why do I do that? I'm a huge Marvel nut. And it always frustrated me that Marvel and even Star Wars, they start in the middle and then they do the origin after. Do you know what I mean? If your story is strong enough, you should be able to start at your origin because that's who you are. You are who you are today because
it makes you who you are.
Yeah. Yes, you were a little boy and you grew up and stuff. So, enough of me rambling on. That's why I want to understand people. So tell me your origin story. What key things from your childhood to adulthood that led you to where you're at currently?
Oh wow, that's a deep question, almost like a therapy
and it can be
question.
And it can be as long as it wants. I'll let you know ahead of time, right? Listeners, buckle up because I'm looking forward to hearing this.
Yeah, so for me, if I'm thinking like, origin story, I come from a family of four boys, and I'm the second of four boys, and so I always considered myself the middle child. And so that kind of brings everything you think comes with the middle child. You get, you have that middle child kind of experience where you're not the oldest, not the youngest. You kind of get, that you get just enough attention, but maybe not too much attention, and all of those kinds of things that you would stereotypically think of that middle child, even though there's four, me being the second. But one of the things I think that characterizes me a lot is kind of my parents, first of all, and growing up in that family, and how much today, like I feel like I'm a blend of these two amazing people, and I think that's kind of, if you were to say like kind of where do I get this characteristic or that characteristic from, I could point right to my mom or dad. And it's funny, the funniest thing about it is, when I look at my brothers and I have three brothers, they more lean towards my dad a whole lot in kind of personality and all of that, but then I come in being in the middle, and I feel like I'm the blend of both of them. So I always thought that was really interesting, where my mom can be, strong, outspoken, and all of that, and then my dad is silent and strong and and all of those things, but I'm a blend of those things personality wise. And what is interesting, you were talking about like a Marvel superhero, they start the story in the middle. And so if you were to look at me now, where I'm probably in the middle of my story, and you'll see these characteristics of, oh, he's a quiet person, oh, but he's also as outspoken. That's where that comes from. That's where that a lot of that comes from, is kind of being this blend of two amazing people that had four amazing boys. And I'm biased, everybody's family's amazing, so
Yeah,
but
of course.
and everybody's parents are amazing. If they think so, I think so. But so it was that perfect, that blend that really made me who I am. But it wasn't something that I just woke up one day and I was realized that I was this blend of both of them. It's something that you grew to appreciate, because when I was younger, I was probably a little bit more on the quiet side, a little bit more on the reserved side. But as I got older, there was just different experiences in my life that allowed me to, kind of become that stronger, more outspoken person when I needed to. And I thought that's, kind of, that origin story, if you will, kind of where you come from. That's a lot of what has to do for me, is kind of, growing up in the family that I did, having the parents that I did, and not only seeing their example, but then realizing, hey, I'm a lot like them. And
That realization is amazing, when we realize that you hit that age where we're more of like our parents than we wanted to ever admit growing up,
oh,
right?
absolutely.
And how much influence they have on us. So yes, it's great, because I'm looking ahead here, and I've actually got specific points about your parents and your
Yeah.
brothers and stuff. So based on the same thing of your origin, so you're in this question, I wanted to know where you were, and you answered that, which is great. You're the second of four. Were any of your siblings a good influence on you growing up, or are they have any influence over you today?
Oh yeah, absolutely. One of the things that's um with four boys that are kind of like 2 years apart, every every
Yeah.
2 years, or and all of that, you have. So we grew up very close. We were all each other's first friends, if you will, and then we were all friends growing up. And it's amazing how in family relationships, how we live in different areas a little bit, but we when if we're together, we pick right back up like we left off, and it's goofing off, it's all of those things. And no matter how long we go, and this is kind of, you say, the influence, you got something different from each one. You get something different from each one of your siblings. And we also didn't always play that comparison game that can have between siblings or close relatives or things like that. And so for me, there's different qualities in each of them that I really get from, one of the things, like my youngest brother's super strong. He goes through a lot. He's very helpful and giving. And my second, or he'll be the third brother, he's very, he's also very giving and loving and all of that. But he's a kind of he's a big guy, tall. He's like 6'4", but he's the kindest person that you'd meet. And then my oldest brother is like the most loving, gentle person that you'd ever meet. But they're all like over 6 foot tall guys. I'm 5'8". You can't tell here on this video, but yeah. So there's different things that you get, I think, with when you grow up in a family like that, that you really appreciate about the whole experience of growing up with someone, with a group of people that you're always connected to. And it's the kind of thing where we have the kind of relationship where, no matter what is going on in life, or maybe we hadn't talked for a little while because life gets busy, if something happens or we need one another, it's at the drop of a hat. You're there. And that's one of the things I really appreciate about about all three of them.
I love what you stated, though, really they were your first friends. And the camaraderie that we have with our siblings. I have two older sisters, but yeah, when I think about it, they were my first friends. And I think
Hmm.
about that watching my grandkids now, or even when I was raising my own kids, they were their first friends, but they're also the first people that they socially interact with, where it's a good thing and they're supporting one
Yeah.
another, and then they also scrap with one another.
Well, I mean, I was going to say that.
There's lots
Well,
of there's lots of emotional connection with siblings.
yeah, I don't want to. I want to paint this super perfect picture for you because while and you could probably a lot of siblings could say this. Yes, they were my first friends, but they were also my first enemies.
Exactly. That's what I was. Thank you for
You know.
that's the simplest way I was
Um,
trying to get at it. Thank you.
and but that's just kind of the natural thing with
Yeah.
siblings is whether it was and being in a house of all boys, it was wrestling, it was we put holes in the wall from wrestling and different things like that, and running around the house and trying to cover up whatever
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
damage we've done to the house or the yard or whatever it is. And but I think, like, going back to your original question, I think all of those things shape you,
Yeah, of course. Yes.
in that. And we can always, there's different events in our life that we can always tie back to, you know going to the
Yeah.
YMCA, going to different things that we did when we were kids, riding our bikes around the neighborhood. And really kind of makes you the person that you are. I was actually talking to my brother the other night about, and we kind of mentioned some of those things, like oh, remember when we used to, because with how crazy the world was, we were just talking about how simple it was when we were kids. I was like, remember we used to just ride our bikes to the Y. Nobody knew where we were for hours.
Yeah.
And nobody cared. But I mean, when I say nobody cared, I mean, it wasn't like, oh, did they get abducted, did something bad
Yeah.
happen? We didn't have cell phones.
Yeah.
But it was just hours later we show back up at home, we have dinner, and it was a simple life. And you appreciate that, it um when you as you get older.
Yeah, for the listeners and those that aren't watching this, um, watching Orson's face, like you could see the energy and your whole face lit up as you're talking about your family, and I so appreciate that because you know, good, bad, or indifference, and the ugly parts of being in a family or relationships. You're right. I think back on my sisters and things that would happen, and parents are coming home and you're trying to scramble to make things pretty again. Right.
Yeah, yeah.
So that the parents aren't going to
There's a lot
throttle you.
of that.
So I know your passion to help others came from your parents. Can you give me an example of something they did while you were growing up that really stands out in your mindset and helps cement your desire?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of things from, I'll give you something specific, but I just want to kind of run over a couple of things. That
Sure,
was
go
just
ahead.
kind of the example. That was just kind of the example of that we always set, was that, my parents are in healthcare, and so they were both nurses, and they, so by nature, by career path, they help people. But you saw that outside of that, whether it was helping kids in our church or school. With four boys in the family, you also had, there were always maybe six kids in our house, seven kids in our house that were, my parents helped, fed, they made us stayed for with us for a while. But it was just that willingness to give to someone else, give of yourself, inconvenience yourself sometimes for someone else, for their benefit, without even expecting something in return. And I think that's an awesome example, and something we can use more of in our world, actually. But also something that I strive for. I constantly think about that. Especially in the last couple of years that our world has been in. You're always thinking about how can you help someone else? How can you impact someone else's life? And so for me, kind of putting that, it also impacts my professional life, because when I interact with someone, in a professional setting, whether I'm coaching them or working with consulting or whatever, it's, yeah, yes, I'm getting paid, and yes, I'm, to provide a service, but at the end of the day, I kind of bring it back down to and say, how can I help you? How can we help you, even if it goes above and beyond what I'm maybe contracted to do, but how can I help you? And that's kind of the approach that I take. And it's impacted me in that way. One of the things that I found, one of the stories that I love, and I'd probably tell this story the rest of my life, is um, my wife was in an accident a few years ago, and so it was so we were, so long story short, there was an accident that she was rear-ended with her and her aunt in the car, and we were in the emergency room. And my mom came to the emergency room. I was in the emergency room because I was at work. And then, so the whole family kind of showed up in the emergency room, back when we can go to the hospital to see when
Yeah.
things happen. And there was a lady that came up to my mom at the time and was like, you would have thought that she's seen a celebrity. Um, and she was like, she was telling someone else, she was like, that's her, that's the lady that helped me that day. This is the lady. You wouldn't believe what she did. And I didn't know. And it was a hug. And then it was, they embraced and all of this. And then, a lot of thank yous. And then so later on, after the whole interaction was over, I said, Mom, what was Mom, what was that about? What happened there? And she had never told me this, never told anyone what she did. The lady that came up to her was at work, and my mom had gotten off of work and went to the store. And the lady worked, she was one of the clerks in the store, someone that she saw, on a semi-regular basis. They knew each other, how, just by being seen. And one of the things that this whole story impressed me was you could tell when my mom said when she walked into the store that day to pick up a couple of items, she noticed that this lady wasn't looked like she wasn't feeling well. Something was off. And so she asked her, how are you doing? How are you feeling? And she said, well, I am feeling sick. I just don't know how I'm going to make it through my shift and all of that. And then, when she said that, she said, well, my mom said, well, can why don't you go home? Would your boss let you off? You don't need to be at work sick and feeling the way you do. She said, well, he said that he'll let me off of work, but I can't afford it. I don't have any more sick leave. I can't have any sick leave. And then so my mom goes into her purse, takes out her checkbook and says, how much would you make today? And then she said, she told her. And then my mom said, okay, well, she wrote her a check. She said, here, if your boss lets you off, take the day off, and here's a check, cash this check for your
Wow.
day.
That's amazing.
And my mom never told that story, and she would have never told me that story had that lady not seen her in the emergency room and made that big spectacle. And
Wow.
that's one of the things where, where you say that, how you just reach out and help someone, and you give from yourself, you give out of maybe even what you need. And I'm not saying, I'm not saying it wasn't even one of those things where my mom's so wealthy that she's just throwing money around and and all of
Yeah.
that. But it was more so that she took time to meet someone's need and find a creative way to, especially for someone that's in a, I'm assuming it was possibly a minimum wage job where she has to work every day. She has very limited sick leave, if not any. I think she was a single mother, had a child to support. And so, but was in a position where she was sick, but could not take off. And that's one of the things that I really, has been characterized, that I learned from my parents, is that, getting into somebody's story, understanding um, what kind of shoes are they walking in? How difficult is it? What is that like to experience those kinds of things? And I could just imagine my mom, who just got off of work herself, probably tired, probably needed some eggs and milk or something like that. And but then took the time to slow down and really hear what someone else had to say. And as a you know as an individual, I saw that in different ways. But that was the most profound story I've heard. I've seen things as a young person, but then this was something that I saw as an adult, that to this day, that's something that's ingrained in my mom and something that she just does. And there's probably stories that I still don't know, the things that she's done. But that was one of those things where I just remember that I carry the story that I carry with myself, but also I think about when I'm interacting with someone, when I'm busy, too busy to listen to and be aware of what someone's actually going through. And I think that, when you're able to slow down and really hear what someone else is being challenged by, then you're thinking about how can I help meet that need or create a different scenario for you that really benefits that other person. So kind of
Wow.
that's
That's great though. I love that. I wrote down here selfless giving, right? I
yeah.
wrote those words down because that's what I heard resonate consistently through that, you telling that story. And that's amazing, right? We don't know a lot of things about our parents. We think we know them,
Hmm.
especially when we get to become adults. But even my parents, my dad turned 80 um, on the 3rd of January. And there's things
Happy
I've,
birthday to him.
yeah, yeah. You make it to I want to make it to 80.
Absolutely.
But we were chatting, and some of the things that I've asked him over the last just couple months, I'm more present and wanting to know things so that
Hmm.
and I'll say, well, you've never told me that. He says, well, you've never asked. Right. So,
Yeah.
you've never come right out and asked me stuff like that. And I've also over the years heard him tell other people's stories when I was younger. And I was just like, I should have sat down and listened to the conversation or become interactive within it. And
Hmm.
it's when, as we age, we realize that the time is so finite. So I want to know more of those stories, right? Because you never
Yeah,
know
absolutely.
tomorrow is not promised, right? So I appreciate you sharing. That was really, really good. I really like that. So you and I have some things in common. Though I was never a high school performing athlete like you morphed into being, can you tell me about those high school years of life and what you did to learn to improve your athletic performance?
Yeah, that's a really great question because it kind of created the foundation for how I approach things today and how I approach challenges today. Because, one of the things that you're I kind of often think that you're limited by what you allow. You're limited by your limitations, like the things that you allow to limit you. And so, I was not the biggest, the fastest, the strongest, growing up. And so as an athlete, you know, of course, any kid playing a sport, you want to be there's a position that you want to play, whether it's quarterback, whether it's receiver. I'm thinking of football,
Yeah.
or if you're a baseball player, you want to be the pitcher, you want to be the catcher, you want to be the, first base, or whatever's that position. You love a position for whatever reason. And, I didn't play football until about 7th grade. So I was a little bit behind the curve. I didn't play Pee Wee, I didn't do all of that. And also I was not always engaged in the process until I got to high school a little bit. And so I kind of said, wow, if you're a running back, then that's like a great position. You get to run, and it's all of that, and you could be the star of the team and all of this stuff. So there was kind of all these different motivations as a high school kid. But I wasn't the strongest or the fastest. There was guys that were in my class that were stronger, they were faster. I was still a little bit chubby. I think I still had a little baby fat in 8th, 9th grade. Um, so a lot of reasons to be, where you felt a little bit slower or whatever. But I took that as a challenge. And so I told my coach, I said, I want to be, so I started my freshman year, I played defensive end, which I'm a tiny person to play defensive end, but that doesn't matter freshman year in high school because you're supposed to grow. I stopped growing at 10th grade, but that's that's a whole nother story. Um, but I took that as a challenge, and I said, that I'm going to put in the work. And so I figured out what I needed to do. That year, we also got a new track coach who came in and really taught you the principles of how to run faster. What are the exercises you need to do? What are all the workouts you need to do? And so that was my freshman year. So going into my sophomore year, through the summer, I, of course, ran track. And then, but that summer is what really changed it for me, was when I, number one, with the guidance of my coach, I figured out what are the workouts and what are those things that I need to do to get better, to get stronger, to get faster. And I showed up every single day. My workout consisted of running from my house to the school, which was maybe about three or four, maybe up to 5 miles. So, but this is in high school. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I wouldn't even run 5 miles now.
Yeah.
But I would jog up there, or I'd get my dad to drop me off. And then I'd go and I'd work out. I'd run stadium steps. I'd lift weights. I'll run the track. I'll do sprint drills. I'll do all of these things. But basically, what happened was, by the time football rolled around that next year, um, I was primed and ready. I was faster. I was stronger. I was competitive. I got the opportunity to play running back and all of those things. So I took that challenge where I felt like I had these physical limitations of whatever I felt my genetics were. That's just the way I explained it back then. If I'm putting myself in those shoes, and I worked hard for something that I really wanted to do, and I achieved it. I, slimmed up. I was faster. I was stronger. I was competitive, and that I will tell you that is something that shaped me, because that's the way I approach things now. Is I see, I often say I see obstacles as opportunities. So I've seen that, when I face an obstacle, I say, okay, how can I learn to go? And I always say, how can I go over it, around it, under it, or through it to get to my goal when I see those obstacles? And that's the kind of the approach that I took then. Although I'm in high school, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just kind of going after something. Now, and especially as a coach, it's like, of course I'm going to put, some a little bit more flair to what I actually did, but it instilled in me then something that carries with to me to this day. So you name the obstacle that I had in my life, I've tried to figure it out, even if it's frustrating to get there. But here's the thing, Dwight, and I think this is hugely important too about this part of the story, is I was able to get a starting position. I was able to get to that position, and I guess that time I was on junior varsity. First game of the season, I was already first half of the game. I was already averaging, and this is just my estimation of I didn't have the numbers back then. I was already averaging about at least 4 yards a carry in the first game. Which that's great for those of you that don't play football. That's a good average. It, you know, 4 or more. But for whatever reason, I don't know if the other team felt, well, we got to stop this guy, because it was 2 plays first down, 2 plays first down, um, and then I got hit and separated my shoulder, and then so that happened, and I was injured. So again, I didn't play the rest of the year. So I rehab, got back from that, and then fast forward to now my junior year going into senior year, I had injuries, and I didn't get up to the potential where I thought that I was going to be, based upon the work that I did in high school. I was still a pretty good athlete, still had some wins and all of that. But the thing was, one of the things that I found on the journey, and this is so incredible, I think, is that sometimes we have disappointments in our journey, but there's always a lesson along the way. And one of the things that I found in mine, even though I tried real hard, but I had an injury that prevented me from going any further, from playing in the pros, playing in college, all of these things that you dream of at that stage. One of the things that I learned about myself is I love the process of training, of being coached, of coaching, of that whole process. I love the development process. I enjoy that piece of it, getting to that stage, and then getting on stage, and then making something happen. And then even if it doesn't, then you pick yourself back up, and you develop again, and you try again, and you keep working that until you get to that point to where you are successful. And that not only shaped me from a person standpoint, I think that's also why I enjoy what I do. I immensely enjoy what I do, and working with people and developing them past and beyond what they feel like they can do. And I when people say, well, some people don't like what they do, I love the the work that I do, especially helping someone develop like that. And it's funny you ask this question, is because I think that's where a lot of that came from, is that whole, I learned to love the process of developing and getting to the stage. Now I've learned how to deliver. Once you get there, you learn how to do that over time. But and hopefully when I'm doing my job now, I'm not going to have any injuries. I'm not going to
Yeah.
pull a hamstring. But learning to enjoy that journey and discovering what lessons you learned along the way, I think is a powerful thing. I know I
Wow.
maybe went into a lot more than
No,
what you
no, you know
asked.
what? I loved it. Never apologize for sharing. I love storytelling, and I love when there's emotion and passion behind it. Again, listeners, you can't see his face, but I can. This is just awesome. I'm so enjoying this. So, what you were talking about there, I wrote down tenacious.
Hmm.
You're a tenacious person. I love it.
Yeah.
I'm tenacious too. I love the fact lessons along the way. I tell people that life is a series of mistakes, but if you choose to leave it as a mistake, you'll never learn from it. So you need to flip it into a life lesson. And as you age, those lessons become your wisdom.
Absolutely.
You aren't born with wisdom. You aren't born with anything, but it's the self-analysis of what you've gone through
Hmm.
that makes it a life lesson, that allows you to
Yeah.
pivot, allows you to escalate and learn from it. And that's why when I was reading about you, I wanted to know more about it. It just resonated with me. I thought, you know
Yeah.
what? There's so many things that we learn in our childhood that as adults, we really realize how much it would have impacted us and possibly impacted others as well. From you being injured to track coach in your freshman year, like all the different things that you mentioned. So, listeners, go back and listen to that part again. I know I certainly will. I listen to my own podcast numerous times.
Yeah.
I take more notes because whenever you think you've reached a spot where you can't learn anymore, you're just a walking dead until
Oh
you
yeah,
die,
absolutely.
right? And I so appreciate you sharing to that level. So thanks for that. So my next thing would be, many years after college, you discovered the field of personal, professional, and organizational development. Did you have a mentor that guided you to realize that you could make a career out of helping individuals and organizations perform at their best?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I worked for a gentleman for 11 years when I was learning organizational development, leadership development, all the stuff that I do for 11 years. And he's a friend of mine now, because I don't work for him anymore, so we're really good friends. I always consider him a mentor. He was the director of the department that I worked for in organizational development, where we did a lot of leadership development and training and leadership coaching. I focused a lot on leadership development, hence why I do what I do now. Um, and it was one of those things. I was actually going to say that when you said talk about life lessons, after I would go and do something and work with a client, we worked for this big academic medical center where we worked with doctors and researchers and administration and all these different type of clients that we had within the organization. And I would go, and whether it was a coaching, whether it was a training, and then we'd have kind of a conversation after it, and his first question would always be, what did you learn? Not even how did it go, but what did you
Yeah,
learn?
yeah,
Or that would be one of the first questions. And it's funny because um he really helped shape my approach in a lot of what I do. But also, one of the things I think that a mentor or someone that like that really does is that they give you opportunity. They give you opportunity to succeed and opportunity to fail. One of the things he said when I started in that position was, I'm going to always be here if you need me, if you need help, if you need direction. But if you need someone to hold your hand, then this is not the job for you. And for that may not be motivating for everyone, but that was something that was motivating for me, because it said that I needed to go and figure out how to do some of the things that we do. I needed to go and lean on, there were some members of the team that's been there longer than me and doing the work longer than me. At the time, I think I was 25-ish years old. And so everyone was bordering twice my age that was on the team. And so I learned from them. I learned their different styles and what they did. And I, kind of just took the initiative to learn. And then, of course, then got direction from my mentor, and who's the director of the department. And yeah, and I would say that really shaped me. But I think what was most valuable was being given the opportunity to learn and grow. And I think oftentimes that's what a good mentor does, is create space so that that person that they're mentoring, and it could be an official mentoring where you say, I'm in a mentoring program, or it can be, I just know you, or I work for you, or you say that someone that's learning, that's, under my authority, if you will, I want to help them, is creating that space for them to learn, creating opportunities for them to develop and exercise what they've learned, and always making it okay if they fail, okay if they, and great when they succeed, but helping them learn those lessons, about when they fail, and just the different opportunities that they have to grow. So yeah, I mean, I had a great mentor.
Wow. I've wrote down a lot of different points here. Um, if you need hand holding, you're in the wrong place. I love that, because really some of the most successful people I know in life have been thrown into the wolves and seen what they're made of, right? Can
Hmm.
they achieve? Can they learn on their own? If they constantly need to reach out and ask questions, that's okay. If they've gotten to a point where they've hit a wall. But frustrated me, because I've not just coaching and stuff. I owned a consulting
Hmm.
firm for many years for the IT industry, and I ran lots of different divisions and departments. I get
Hmm.
hired as a consultant, and you get people that thought they knew it all, or they weren't receptive to um, learning on their own. They're constantly asking questions, the most simplistic questions, when they should have, I'll say to them, did you try figuring it out? I'd rather have somebody on a team or working with me or
Hmm.
mentoring me that is willing to make mistakes, life lesson, wisdom. And, unless, it's something that's really detrimental, sometimes people just need to step out on faith, try something. If you make a mistake, whatever, right? If you constantly need a hand holding, you're always going to be in that, sorry for those that don't like hearing this, but you'll be stuck in that job mentality, just over
Yeah,
broke,
yeah.
going to work, go home, get paid. You're stuck on a hamster wheel. If you're one of those people, there's hope that you can learn, right? To
Hmm.
just step out and take chances. Find somebody, as you mentioned, Orson, that will, allow you to grow and to expand and to move forward in life, and it's going to be like you're a co-pilot. You're still the pilot of
Right.
your life. Your mentor is a co-pilot that's going
Hmm.
to do course corrections, just like the co-pilot does in an airplane, right? So it's I love that, though. If you need handhold, you're at the wrong place, because
Yeah,
he's
he
right.
said that.
He's
That
right,
was
though. He's right, though. Right. And for those that offends, it's because you're just not at the right place between your 6 inches, but you can get there.
oh yeah, absolutely.
Anybody can get there. You got to be tenacious, and you got to be somebody that's willing to, put in the work.
Yeah, yeah, you have to. And that's what it takes, is that, you learn those lessons by doing things, not by kind of sitting back and allowing, kind of life to pass and think that you're going to get it, or somebody's going to teach you in a class. Most of what I learned was by trial and error, because I made tons of mistakes. I mean, but I learned how to do things the right way, or where I was not as effective as I could be. Again, I did it in an ineffective way, and I learned how to do it right. So it's a learning process. But I like your analogy, how you say that mentor is that co-pilot that really helps you, um, kind of course correct as you're going along your path.
Yeah, they shouldn't be doing everything for you. Obviously, they might have to intercede um, in certain plays of what you're doing of your life. Like we have a playbook, all of us do, and some people don't realize it, but they're just going to say, hey, this play that you're doing, this is how you need to tighten it up. And the next time, that mentor also needs to know when to say, figure it out. Get back
Hmm.
to me after you've either succeeded or failed, and we'll discuss it. We'll work on it,
Yeah.
right? And that's part of what a mentor does, is, again, co-pilot. So yeah, I appreciate you saying that. So I love the fact you state you are an expressive introvert. I myself am the same and have had to develop this skill or talent over my lifetime as well. Once upon a
Yeah.
time, I used to avoid being in the spotlight and walk across the proverbial street to avoid it. Now I enjoy it in fixed doses, obviously. I'm still
Yeah.
introverted. Your superpower is being an introvert, where my superpower is empathy. Approximately 2 years ago, a person that you probably know, many people do that are listening, Ed Millett, who I've known
Hmm.
for 17 years. I've followed him in the finance world, and I'm part of RT as well, but had a post asking about everyone's superpower that they possessed. I commented mine was empathy, and he said no one had ever told him that. However,
Yeah.
he completely agreed. And we had a little bit of a side discussion about that. So your superpower has made you an excellent listener and an
Hmm.
observer of what and who's around you. Can you speak more in detail on how it has allowed you to be one of the best at coaching, training, and advising others?
Yeah, I think a lot more happens in stillness than we understand. I think a lot of times, um when people are getting into meditation and prayer and all of that, and especially talking about being still, and you can hear and you can listen. Going back to even growing up, I was more a quiet kid, but I knew everything that was going on in the room because I was observing and I was listening. When I, kind of from a professional standpoint now, when you talk about coaching someone, 90% of that is listening to, because you're constantly listening, and those you're constantly listening for what people say. You're constantly listening for what people don't say. And somewhere in between there is the truth of the message that they're actually trying to communicate. And so when you can really in your mind be listening for those things, or what people are saying, what people are not saying, then you can get really to the core of maybe what the issue is or what's going on, and what how you can help them. And I think some of that, going back to your earlier questions of kind of like that origin story again, I think your personality is partially genetic, partially it's nurture and nature. It's partially the environment you grew up in, and partially genetic. So some of that I get from my dad, especially, um, and my mom for that matter. But it's about listening. It's about hearing those messages, and particularly for me, um, it's because I don't have to be involved as the speaker in a conversation. I find value in listening. And people want to be heard. People want to tell their stories. People want to, and not just in a professional, like what I do, coaching session, but even in just everyday interactions. People want to be heard and seen and understood. And and the more you can create that space, that's something that's, I think comes with that, like you said, that superpower. But um but for me, it's also kind of creating that balance, like you said, being an expressive introvert. So if you see me on videos I post online, and right now while I'm talking, and you see like my hands, I'm very animated. I can do that, but a lot of times I'm kind of more of a quiet person. And you send me to a dinner party, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to talk to people. I have to interact. But um but I find the value in those, one-on-one conversations, not having to be life of the party. But I've learned also that when I'm talking about something that's important to me, or I can help somebody in some way, that's where that expressiveness comes out. When what I'm saying can maybe resonate or help someone. And a lot of that started, again, going back to like junior high school, when I joined the theater arts group. um my brother was in band and I didn't want to do that, and my older brother was in band. I said, I don't want to do that, I want to do my own thing. So I joined theater arts, and they had this speech competition where up until that point, I hadn't done any public speaking and whatsoever. And they had this speech competition, and the eighth graders came around to everyone's room and practiced their speech and and it had to be an original speech. And, when they practiced their speech, I was like, wow, that is amazing. That is, I mean, they seem so, there was just something that was a draw to me to be on stage, if you will. They were standing in front of the class, be on stage, having a conversation, talking about something that they knew. And it was a memorized speech, which that was okay. And all of that. But it just seemed so intriguing to me. And so I said, when I get the opportunity, that's what I want to do. And so I took that opportunity and, I joined the theater arts group, and I mostly focused on speaking. And I entered that speech competition. I won third place. I should have won first. That's competitive inside of me. But it brought something out of me in being able to have conversations about things that I talk about, because that eighth grade speech, and gosh, now you're gonna make me, now I want to remember what it was about. It was about dreams. It was about accomplishing your dreams. And I remember I told different stories in it. Now I hadn't talked about this for I don't know how many years, so I'm trying to remember. So this is like 200 years ago.
You're an old soul.
Yeah. I talked about accomplishing dreams. So it was something that was important to me. And I told, and you had to put in different stories and all of that. But it brought me a little bit out of that shell to where I said, oh, I could actually do both of these. Because then it helped me socially. I can be the quiet person that I feel that like I am normally, but I can also be this expressive person when there's things that I really want to talk about or share or interact with other people. But it's also a gift because I can automatically go quiet and really listen. And I think that balance is what really, really helps people.
Yeah, I love what you said. Well, I'm just, saying this in my words, like a lot more happens in the stillness than we understand. That is so powerful to say that, because it is so true. Most people are waiting to talk, not listen.
Yeah.
And they miss so many nuggets of information and so much unique things that other people share with them that can help, level up in their lives, or, push them to climb. And, I love that, though. So much happens in the stillness, and
Yeah.
people don't know how to be still and listen, though. They don't.
Yeah. And that's one of the things, and you coach as well, is that, I get, kind of concerned about when people say, oh, my coach. I said, but are you helping people? Are you just hype on the, on the stage and online? But are you taking the time to really listen and help people and help them get from point A to point B or Z, whatever, however you want to put it? And like, yeah, is it just your voice that you want to hear, or do you want to hear the voice of that individual and really get into where they are? Because oftentimes most times the problem that people present is not the problem that they have. And so as a coach, it's about finding what is the actual problem, what's the actual root of that. And you talk about that being a superpower. That's where you make the difference, is, and then you can literally help them unravel the issues that they may be dealing with, it, whether it may be something that's personal and emotional, or it may be a business issue. Either way, there's a core to that issue. And the way you the way you discover more about it, you can either get hype and motivate them, or you can be still and listen. And a lot of times I choose to be still and really, really listen, and then know when to get hype and motivate them too. But I think there's a place for both. But I think when you're able to do that, that really helps people.
Oh, absolutely. I love that. It's certainly something that I will work on the rest of my life. On my last, my last breath and I've passed, I will always work at being a better listener. And I find podcasting has done that for me, as well as I know for myself and those that are listening, that I know there's quite a few of my listeners that follow me every day, and I post every day. 319 days later, I've done videos every single day, and it's taught me to be a better listener, to be that person that is still, because now I'm always wanting to know, what am I going to talk about the next today or the rest of the week or this month. And that fear used to grip me. And then one day I had this light bulb effect. You know, you always tell people they need to listen more. How about you start listening closer to the podcasts you're listening to? Like I follow people, obviously, just like you, or the books you're listening to, or the conversations you're having on Zoom, or, you know, on the phone or face to face. All of a sudden I had this plethora, like it was like a wave washing over me of all these things I could talk about. And I've been tracking them since March 1st. Like I've got a specific, I use OneNote, and I have a specific folder that I've been tracking all my ideas.
Oh, wow.
And I'll be driving, and let's say I'm listening to a Tony Watley, and even on your guys' podcast, I'll pause it. I'll tell my phone to take a note, and I'll just blah, 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 blah. And then later when I'm not driving, I'm back at my computer. I pull up OneNote and then I'll edit it, because it's like a mosquito fart. It didn't exist. It's gone. Right. And
no, that's true. It'll leave you. I hate when that happens. You have an idea. And it leaves you.
The worst ones are when it happens at 2-3 in the morning and I don't want to roll over and get my phone.
Yes.
And then I wake up and go, I wake up and go, oh, what was I thinking about? Darn.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So the stillness and being quiet and listening to others is a skill that I think we always have to work on and master, and caring about what other people say. And it's helped feed me doing my videos. It's helped me doing my podcasts. It's just, it made me a better coach and a person.
Yeah. And I would say, Dwight, is that I think you are a good listener already. So it's something that you've probably worked on and listening, because that's one of the things that I try to, if I'm talking a lot like I have been during this interview, then you're listening well. I mean, I feel like you're listening and tuning in and asking really insightful questions. And I think you would be right to say that your superpower is empathy, because I think that, empathy and introversion, not that they always go hand in hand. You can be an extrovert and be very empathic, but also that gift of empathy really makes you a really great listener as well, because it's you wanting to be in the shoes of that other person. And if you're naturally empathic in it, or it's a skill that you can develop, it's definitely a skill that you can develop. That listening is one of those skill sets that goes along with that empathy. And so to me, just, in the conversation that we had before the show started, in this conversation while we're talking, I think it's something that you've developed, and that is also a strong gift of yours. Even watching all the videos that you've done over the last year or so, you see it, you see it, and I think it resonates with a lot of people as well. Yeah,
it's the strangest thing. And since you brought that up, and I appreciate the kind words, I do work at it a lot. I've definitely got better days than others, but I'll have a conversation. Yeah, I'll have a conversation, and I've done videos, and people will reach out to me and go, like, that was insightful. Well, usually it's because I might have a conversation with one of my 5 kids or a client or whatever, and they'll say something to me, and it's very profound, and I need to talk about it that day, right? I need to share it, because and I tell, when I'm doing the video, I'll say I was speaking to this person, or I read this today, or I got this idea, to let them know that it was so profound and impactful that I needed to discuss it. I've literally, swear to God knowing that I'm telling the truth, I've literally thought about, I'm going to do this today as a conversation on my video log. Something will happen hours before I do my video. That'll completely, I'm going to do something different. Right. Yeah. So, because I feel that, people that resonate with us and that like what we have to say, appreciate the fact that I'm not scripted. And that was the toughest part about doing live videos, because out of the 319 videos I've done, 318 have been live. Day one was the only one that I recorded.
Oh, wow.
Only one. Somebody challenged me in the group to do them live, and I thought that meant we had to do them live. So I started doing them live. A few weeks in, Tony says, well, you don't have to do them live. Okay, well, I've already gotten past the sweat pockets, the sweaty bald head. I've already got past the dry mouth and all that other stuff. Screw it. And I keep on going. So yeah, I do work at it, and I appreciate you recognizing that. So the last thing I'm going to ask, I got to skip a bunch of stuff. We're going to have a part 2 of you and I having an interview. Maybe I'll even progress over to your show. Who knows? So, Owen, if you had to give our listeners one last closing message, what would you tell them in regards to giving a heck and never giving up?
Wow. I think the first thing would be, or kind of the most encompassing thing is give yourself an opportunity to succeed. And when you talk about giving a heck, I think I think that encompasses that a lot, in addition to a lot of other things that you talk about, because I think a lot of times we don't give ourselves a chance to be successful. A lot of times we discount ourselves and we hang our dreams or the things that we really want to do in life on the shelf, and we don't give ourselves a chance, or we try to give ourselves a chance and we get revved up, especially we're recording this in January 2021 and everybody's all hyped and happy and about their goals and ready to face this new year, and people we all traditionally start the year that way, but then we kind of get into this routine of sometimes we'll self-sabotage with whatever behaviors we may have and go back to the old way of doing things. But if I could say, one thing for anyone, and one of the things that's dramatically has changed my life, and even something I continue to work on, is give yourself a chance to succeed. Because when you do, that opens the doors to everything that you want. And so whether that means you need to be more disciplined, whether it means you need to pick up new habits, stop old habits, get a coach, invest in yourself, make a change in your routines or habits or lifestyle that'll help you be successful. Give yourself a chance. For some people, it may be taking that leap and say, hey, I'm going to start that business. I'm going to, approach that person to start a relationship. I'm going to, go back to school. I'm going to, whatever it is. Everybody's different in their aspirations. But when you give yourself a chance to succeed, it starts with taking that one big bold step, and just let the momentum build up, and you'll find yourself successful. And when you talk about giving a heck, give a heck about your own life, and when you do, because if you don't do it, no one else is going to do it for you. But when you do, watch out, because you're about to be very successful.
Yeah, it's so true though. That's the whole, when I went through my personal branding and then dealt with Tony and a few other people that I had mentor me and give me some great advice, why do you want to use Give a Heck? And Give a Heck came up, Tony, that was from Tony, 100%. Because I couldn't get what the heck, and I was kind of frustrated. And he's the one that checked and searched for it. He's the one that messaged me and said, hey, this is available. Mm-hmm. And he's the one that started me on the path of, why am I not using my name as a branding tool? And the fact that I've gone through so much in my life and suffered with quiet desperation, that when I finally learned and woke up one day, listeners, to give a heck about myself, I could never give a heck about anybody else. You'll never be successful, truly successful in life, until you love yourself and like what you look at in the mirror. Do I like what I look at in the mirror 365 days? Absolutely not. That would be lying to myself and lying to everybody else. I'm a pretty blunt person. And, I go through my struggles. Even this week, last week, I've had struggles. But bottom line, you're right. Give yourself an opportunity to succeed, you initially said, and then you went back to that and said, you got to give yourself a chance. And, maybe it's discipline, your discipline issues, new, habits, you need to change lifestyle. But what I will tell the listeners, start with one thing. Yeah. And the one thing you need to do, one thing you need to do is self-development onto yourself, and look at the associations you have. What you watch, what you listen to is all associations. It's not just who you hang around with. And take one step, take one baby step, and find somebody that you may not currently be part of their 5, meaning you are who you are. I know, this really well, Orson. If your tribe, the people that you want to resonate and be like, become part of their group. Reach out to them and say, I want to take this initial baby step. can you help me? Maybe it'll cost you a few dollars. It's not an expense, it's an investment, but you got to start
Right.
with that one baby step. And that first initial baby step is knowing you want to change, and that you're disgusted at where you're at in life and looking in the mirror, you're not happy with yourself. I've been there. You've been there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you go through all of that, but it is well worth it to get further ahead than where you are today.
Oh, it's just, I look at all the times I've tripped, fell, picked myself up, dusted myself off, and I looked around like who's helping me, or blaming the world or blaming everybody else, and realizing the only person I could blame was myself, and then having to self-reflect and realize that I got sucked back into poor discipline or habits that I had developed that were great. I'd stop because I'd stopped the same associations. I let old associations creep back in. Again, it's not just people, right? Associations of what we listen to. And, you know, we're all in, life's in session, right? This isn't a dress rehearsal. We're all working projects. But the thing is though, people like yourself and I, we are constantly striving to do that. And we want to become better because we want to serve others. And that's what I want to do. I just want to serve others and live vicariously through their lives, right? It may sound silly, but I do. I live vicariously through them, because when you were talking about your journey, right, from our first origin question up to now, I swear to you, I could, with my eyes open, I was living it with you.
Yeah.
So you're a great storyteller, by the way.
Thank
you. You're welcome. I really enjoyed it.
Worked on that. So
me too.
But yeah,
listeners, I work on that too. I do. I work on it. Right. I think one of the most impactful books that I went through in 2020 was Dennis Miller's Story Brand. I think it's called Story Branding or whatever.
Yeah, I've heard of. I need to get that.
Wow, I did because Tony recommended it to us in the society. Yeah, even yesterday I posted up about some books in the society because Tony challenges us to post stuff. I posted about books, and man, there's a plethora of people within the society that, we love that book, or hey, what about this book? And this is why.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? Like, I'm a big Audible fan. I read so much that for me to sit down with my brain, I can't read a book. I'll have to read the same page 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
I love Audible.
Like Audible.
Yeah, I do, big time. So, well, our time is almost up. I want to respect our listeners and your time. However, before we end, can you please tell the listeners what's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, the best way to reach me is through my website, of course, social media as well. My website is theorsonwells.com. And on social media, it's real easy. It's The Orson Wells. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook at The Orson Wells. So
right on.
as long as you look for The Orson Wells, you will find me. And I encourage you to reach out if you have any questions. And so it's funny, you said you used your name for your podcast, Give a Heck, and so I had to putting the on the front is not a vanity thing. It's just what I had to do to get the rest of my name as a domain name. So it was great. So yeah, they can find me at The Orson Wells on Instagram, Facebook, and my website.
Sounds fantastic. I'll make sure that it's put into the show notes as well, which is available, as well as the links to both audio and video will be available at giveaheck.com. You can go into the podcast part of the portal. But thanks so much for being on Give a Heck, Owen. I appreciate your time and sharing some of your experiences. Orson, sorry, so that others too can learn. It is never too late to give a heck.
Thank you for taking time out of your day and listening to Give a Heck. If you find value, I'd appreciate you sharing with your friends and family so they too can learn how to live life on purpose, not by accident. So you do not miss the next episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, and please also post a review. I look forward to reading your comments. This has been Dwight Heck. If you want to check out other podcast episodes or today's show notes, please check out my website, giveaheck.com. And until next time, together let us all strive to give a heck.